There is something different about Loch Ness at night. The water doesn't just look dark, it feels heavy. Cold air rolls down from the Scottish hills, and the surface becomes a black mirror. For nearly a century, people have claimed they saw something break that surface. Not shadows, not waves, something alive. It was April 1933. A couple was driving along the newly built road near Loch Ness. Suddenly, the woman screamed. Ahead of them, something enormous moved across the road. It wasn't running. It wasn't rushing. It moved slowly, with weight. They described a long neck rising from a massive body, skin like wet leather. When it reached the water, it didn't splash. It slid in, silently. It was sometime in the mid-1970s. Two young campers decided to spend the night near the water's edge of Loch Ness. They had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. But to them, it was folklore. Something entertaining, not something real. The night was unusually still. No strong wind, no crashing waves, just the quiet crackling of their small campfire. Around midnight, the air changed. One of them later described it as a sudden heaviness, as if the silence became thicker. Then they heard it. Not a splash, not an animal cry. A slow movement in the water, deliberate, measured. They turned toward the lake. At first, they saw nothing, just darkness. Then one of them raised a flashlight and pointed it toward the surface. The beam cut through the mist, and that's when they saw it. A dark shape rising from the water. Not quickly, not violently, slowly. A head, long, rounded, water streaming down its surface. Its skin looked smooth and wet, almost rubber-like. Then the eyes caught the light. They reflected it. But they did not blink. The creature did not thrash. It did not panic. It remained there, partially above the surface, completely still, watching. For nearly 30 seconds. 30 seconds that felt like minutes. One of the campers later said he couldn't move, not because he wanted to stay, but because fear locked his body in place. He said it didn't feel like observing wildlife. It felt like being studied. Then, without warning, the head began to descend. Not backward, not sideways. Straight down, as if pulled vertically into darkness. No splash, no ripples spreading across the lake. Just silence returning to the surface. The flashlight beam trembled in their hands. They didn't speak for several seconds. Before sunrise, they packed their belongings. They left the campsite without finishing breakfast. They never camped near Loch Ness again. And for years they told almost no one. Because what frightened them most was not the size, not the shape, but the feeling that something ancient had looked back at them. In 1960, a man named Tim Dinsdale stood on the shore of Loch Ness with a camera. He wasn't a thrill seeker. He wasn't chasing fame. He was simply curious. For days he waited, watching the water, studying its movement. Then suddenly, he saw it. A dark hump moving across the surface. Not drifting, not floating aimlessly, moving with direction. He raised his camera and began filming. The footage was shaky, grainy, imperfect, but clear enough to show one thing. This was not an ordinary boat. Frame-by-frame analysis later suggested something powerful beneath the surface. No visible propeller wake, no engine disturbance, just a solid mass cutting through the water. Years later, experts reanalyzed the film. Some believed it showed a living creature. Others insisted it was misidentification. But Dinsdale never changed his story. He said what he saw was alive and intelligent, and far larger than anyone wanted to admit. In the early 1970s, a small team of divers entered the waters of Loch Ness. Their mission was simple: explore the depths, document the lake floor, search for unusual formations. They were experienced, trained, calm under pressure. But Loch Ness is not an ordinary lake. It is over 230 meters deep, cold, dark, and filled with suspended peat particles that reduce visibility to almost nothing. One diver later described it as diving into liquid night. As they descended, light disappeared quickly. At only a few meters down, everything became shadow. Their flashlights created narrow tunnels of visibility in a vast black void. They saw rocks, sediment, nothing unusual, until one of them felt it. Not saw it, felt it. A movement in the water, a pressure shift, something large displacing space nearby. He turned his light sharply. For a moment, he believed he saw a massive shape beyond the beam. Not clearly, not detailed, just size and motion. He later said the strangest part wasn't fear. It was the sense of scale, as if something far bigger than expected was sharing the water with them. The team resurfaced earlier than planned. Back on shore, one diver refused to go back down. Another claimed his equipment malfunctioned, though it later tested fine. Officially, nothing extraordinary was reported. Unofficially, at least 2 members of the team admitted years later that something about that dive felt wrong. Not dangerous, but watched, and they never volunteered to dive Loch Ness again. When you separate the stories, they sound unbelievable. A road crossing, a filmed object, campers frozen in fear, divers sensing something in the dark. But when you place them side by side, a pattern begins to form. Across decades, witnesses describe similar features: a long shape, dark skin, slow, deliberate movement, not chaotic, not aggressive, controlled. Many sightings happen in calm weather, in still water, often near the shoreline, often at dusk or at night. The creature, if it exists, does not behave like a predator attacking boats. It does not chase. It does not thrash violently. It appears, it observes, and then it disappears. Another strange detail. Many witnesses avoided publicity. They did not monetize their stories. They did not tour talk shows. Some waited years before speaking at all. Why would so many ordinary people invent the same description? Why do independent accounts share movement patterns? And why does the lake itself feel different? Loch Ness is deep, very deep. Its bottom is uneven. Cold currents move beneath layers of darker water. Visibility is limited. Sound travels strangely. If something large lived there, it wouldn't need to surface often. It would only need to surface rarely, just enough to remind people it might still be there. Maybe every story is coincidence. Maybe psychology fills in the gaps, or maybe there is something ancient beneath that water. Something patient, something rarely seen, but never completely gone. In 2018, scientists conducted one of the most advanced investigations ever performed at Loch Ness. They didn't search with cameras. They didn't chase shadows. They studied environmental DNA. Every living creature leaves traces in water: skin cells, microorganisms, genetic fragments invisible to the eye. If a large, unknown animal lived in Loch Ness, its DNA should be present. The results were surprising. There was no evidence of a giant reptile, no unknown prehistoric survivor, no hidden dinosaur. But the study did reveal something interesting: a significant presence of eel DNA, far more than expected. Some scientists suggested that large eels might explain certain sightings, but even that theory leaves questions unanswered. Because witnesses do not describe something thin, they describe mass, height, shape, and behavior. So what remains? A lake over 230 meters deep. Cold, dark, ancient. A century of similar testimonies, and a mystery that refuses to disappear. Maybe there is no monster. Maybe human perception fills the unknown with shape and meaning. Or maybe Loch Ness does not reveal everything that lives within it. Some mysteries survive not because they are proven, but because they are never fully disproven. The surface remains calm, the water remains dark. And sometimes that is enough to keep the question alive. What lies beneath?